Look up in the sky.
It's a bird.
It's a plane.
No, it's the tax man. He may not be a superhero, but Tony Mauro has saved many retirement plans with his nearly superhuman knowledge of tax planning strategies. It's time for Plan with the Tax Man.
Hello and welcome to Plan with the Tax Man podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast here. Mark Killian, your co-host, alongside Tony Mauro, Des Moines' professional alternative at Tax Doctor Inc., serving you here in the central Iowa from his office in Des Moines. You can reach out to Tony and his team by calling 844-707-7381. If you need some help with your tax planning or retirement situation, Tony is here to help. We're going to talk about these different things often on the podcast, investing, finance, retirement, whatnot, and try to do it in a way that hopefully entertains, educates, and offers a couple of useful nuggets of information. You can also check out Tony and his team online at origtaxdoctor.com. That's short for original, origtaxdoctor.com. Tony's been doing this for more than 23 years and a great resource for you here in the area. Tony, my friend, welcome in. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Doing all right this week? A little better than last week, hopefully?
Hopefully, yes. We're getting to the spring here.
Getting there, working our way into it. That's right. Yes. So hopefully will be a good spring thus far. I tell you what, 2019's been a little rough for me and my family personally this year. So the first quarter anyway. So I'm hoping the remainder of the year gets a little bit better. So hopefully to all our listeners also. Hey, don't forget, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, usually you can click right here on the webpage where you found it or on social media, things of that nature. But you can share it. You can subscribe to it on iTunes, iHeart, Stitcher, Google Play, various different ways to find that on the old social media outlets. But we're going to kick things off with an email question that we got into your website. And again, that is origtaxdoctor.com, origtaxdoctor.com. And it's from Richard in Des Moines. He's in your backyard there, Tony, and he says, I'm curious, because of the tax differences, do you choose different types of investments in something like a Roth IRA versus a 401k or a traditional IRA?
Mm-hmm. And the short answer to that is I would say no, not really, depending on your age. I think where he's coming from with that question is, since the Roth is with after-tax dollars versus the 401k and the traditional IRAs that go in generally pre-tax, that, some people think that they can get or have an advantage of choosing different investments depending on the type of retirement plan that they're going into. But what we try to do is basically coach them into, if you're young, we're trying to be more aggressive generally, and it really doesn't matter which you're choosing, for the vehicle. And same way if you're 55 and nearing retirement, it doesn't really matter as far as that goes, because in the Roth, the earnings are going to be tax-free forever. In the 401k and IRA, of course, they're tax deferred, but you do have the IRS looming in the background wanting their piece for those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Uncle Sam's been waiting. He's not going to wait forever.
No.
And I tell you, we're probably going to talk a little bit more about this, but the Roths have obviously been a very hot topic over the last, 18, 24 months or so with the new tax, programs that were put in for 2018. People have been very interested in that because we are in a low tax environment, and it's kind of the devil type of thing. So we're going to, great question, Richard. Thank you so much for submitting that in. Reach out to Tony and talk more specifically one-on-one if you need some specific help there. 844-707-7381, and always, talk with a professional before you take any action. 844-707-7381. So our main topic this week here on the podcast, Tony, is the 5 most common pain points in your financial life. When it comes to financial planning, everybody's got a pain point. I mean, heck, we got pain points in all walks of life, but finances certainly seem to usually top the list, right? Most of us have something.
That's right.
So the pain points are different for everybody, but everyone has something that's kind of unique to them, or maybe triggers them in a different way than maybe their neighbor or their spouse or whatever. So tell us about a few times here where you've helped people with some of these, or just give us some thoughts. I'm going to go with the main one. Everybody knows that the number one concern people have, especially for retirees and pre-retirees, is running out of money before you run out of life. And that's understandable, but if you take it to an extreme, you can really kind of set yourself up for some failure if you're not being level-headed and, of course, planning properly for this.
That's correct. And basically, most of the time this occurs with people in their 50s and, of course, beyond, because they're a little closer,
right,
to the retirement.
Hitting the panic button.
And, yes. And what we have to do with them is basically, sit them down and say, okay, what do you have now? And and when are you going to retire, and what do you want out of it? Because, everybody's going to be different, and everybody's got different pots of money and different things that they're going to have to draw upon when they do retire. And once we know that, then it's really pretty easy to say, here's what you've got, here's your, roughly what your life expectancy is.
Right.
And with the computers these days, you can take that and run very quickly different scenarios and their chances of success or not running out of money before they die. And if their chances of success aren't very great, then we have to say, well, we need to make some changes then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's my mom used to make the old joke, well, I can always get a job at Walmart as a greeter when I'm older. And I was like, actually, but I've heard they're eliminating that now, so that Walmart is doing that. So, yeah. But, being silly, but obviously no one wants to have to go back to work, obviously, because they've run out of money. So having those numbers ran, having that conversation, and also planning smartly, because, look, you can have all the data under the sun. Now, I'm 48 years old, Tony. I had open heart surgery at 41. I had a quadruple bypass, and I could put all kinds of indicators in that say I'm going to, die early. But it would be silly of me and not fair to my wife either to kind of plan that way, knowing that anything can happen, right? We should definitely plan to live to 100, especially from a financial side. And then if you don't, well, that's fine, but at least the numbers are done and things are prepared for that versus the other way where you go, oh, I'm going to die at 68 and you plan for it and you wind up living to 88 and you're broke.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you got to be smart about it. Don't take those fears and let them dominate you. Certainly have the conversation, especially when you can have a conversation, have the numbers run and find out the information pretty easily. So
very easy.
It's one of those things you can certainly do. You just have to kind of pull your head out of the sand and do it. And look, it's not the funnest thing in the world to think about, well, I got to plan for my retirement or plan for my demise, but it's something that the peace of mind, that moment is really great when you take the time. And that's why we're talking about some of these 5 common pain points here on the podcast. All right, number 2, we're going to bring it back around. We started with death. So what's next, right? Taxes.
That's right.
Angst about taxes. And we kind of touched on this with our email question this week, but right now people are really in tune to how they could be smarter with their retirement plans when it comes to taxes because of the tax environment we're in.
Yes, and even though we're in a relatively low tax environment, we try to tell people that tax, the IRS has got their hands out and they're waiting for you, especially in 401ks and traditional IRAs.
Yep.
We call it, Uncle Sam's got a lien on your retirement and they want their money. So it's important to try to plan, properly for that, because there are ways to minimize taxes, of course, as you retire, and then, of course, all the way through until you retire. And that's where the tax planning, whether it be retirement focused or just some other things you can do to keep your taxes at a minimum, are important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is Plan with a Taxman podcast with Tony Mauro. And Tony, let me ask you about this. I want to spend a few extra minutes here because, again, as I mentioned, there's been a lot of conversation. A lot of people have seemed very, very interested in doing Roth conversions or contributing more to Roths because, and smartly so, I think, and you tell me your opinion because obviously this is what you do every day. We don't know what the tax rates are going to be 20 years from now. If you're a pre-retiree, if you're 50 plus, let's say, and you know what the tax rates are now, doing some conversions, paying the taxes now, yes, you have to eat, take it money out now and pay it, but what's the tax rate's going to be maybe 25 years into your retirement? We don't know. And so kicking that can down the road, you are setting yourself up to pay that bigger tax bill, that bigger portion, Uncle Sam. Are you seeing a lot of that in your practice?
We're seeing a lot of that, and we talk a lot to people about, possibly taking some of that money and converting it to Roths now and minimizing the tax in the bracket you're in. And that way, you don't have to worry about it down the road. Because I always tell people, our government, this is a personal opinion, seems to be kicking the can down the road. They spend way more than they take in. What makes us think taxes are going to stay low or go lower? I mean, in most sound people's minds, something's going to have to give at some point. And maybe that's past our lifetimes, but maybe not.
Yeah,
and so I think we need to prepare for it.
No, I think that's a really good point, and smartly so, again, for a lot of people right now who are thinking about that, because a big overlooked component of your retirement plan, a lot of times we go, I want to make sure I have enough income to continue my lifestyle that I'd like to live in retirement, but we don't necessarily put as much focus on saying, well, being as tax efficient as possible through our retirement can also help. that
Yes.
lifestyle. So
Yeah.
really good points here today on the podcast with Tony Mauro. And we're talking about common pain points in the financial life. And of course, we hit death and taxes 1 and 2. Number 3, the paralyzing fear often that we get of a nursing home care. And maybe nursing home is not the right term anymore because there's a lot of long-term care options, but some form of help, assisted living, whatever, that can drain your plans.
Exactly. And this is huge for many of our clients today. People are living longer, and sometimes they're just outliving the useful life, of their bodies.
Right.
And, we can sit and talk about the stats, for a half hour of the likelihood.
And I'm sure we'll do that one week.
Yeah. And, it gets a little, off kilter a little bit to think that this happens to a lot of people. And many don't end up in a full-fledged, nursing facility, but they do need some help of some kind. And the problem is, unless people have been through it, and it only takes you to talk to somebody who has been through it with a parent, that it wipes out lifetime savings in a matter of 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the big thing is okay, well, what do we do about it? Do we take the nursing home, the long-term care policy when we're young and, pay the premiums, which, sometimes, depending on what you're looking for, can be, expensive. But we try to show them that, they're insuring their house, they're insuring their car and everything else that has much less statistical, facts of bad things happening. And yet a lot of people don't want to cover this or at least address it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple reasons, right? Again, to your point, we could spend a lot of time. Just the fact of mortality of ourselves, is a big reason why we kind of not do it. But what is the statistic, Tony? 2 out of every 3 people at this point now, I think, are going to experience it. They say it's 2 out of every 3. So, when they say you look left, you look right, and one of the 3 of you is going to need it. So
they need something.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's certainly worth having a conversation and making sure that you're addressing it, and definitely an item where you can't put, and it's not always just the person who goes through the long-term care need, it's the spouse often that is left behind, because to your point, it can wipe out retirement plans and savings and so on and so forth, and maybe you end up passing and now they're left behind with nothing. So
with nothing, and they end up living for, quite some time.
Quite some time, yeah. So, do your retirement a favor. Definitely have these conversations with your advisor. And of course, Tony can help. He is a certified financial planner and an EA, an enrolled agent of more than 23 years. This is Playing with the Tax Man with Tony Mauro of Tax Doctor Inc. And we got a couple more we got to squeeze in real fast. These last 2, those were the big 3 we kind of covered, but we'll talk about the last 2. Sometimes it's just a pain point. It's just a scare, a frustration when you first walk away from the paycheck, right? When retirement gets there, we're super excited, all that good stuff, but there's some anxiety because, well, I'm not getting that paycheck deposited every 2 weeks now.
Yeah, and most people, they have anxiety, and until we can show them that, here's what you've got coming in, regularly every month, and it's going to be either at, maybe a little less, maybe a little more than when you were working, but it's going to come in every month, and if it's set up properly, so it's just like a paycheck, and you're going to not notice, any difference in that. And once they do that, they tend to relax a little bit and start enjoying retirement.
Yeah, and I think having that structured plan, and we're going to spend time on these different topics. We're going to kind of dive into them through the weeks as we're doing the podcast. But yeah, once you can kind of see those income streams, and we all know it, right? We all think, well, at some point the paycheck stops and I've got to be able to turn on some income streams. And it's not like it used to be. Maybe you're lucky, maybe you've got a pension, but it used to be you had a pension and Social Security and you were pretty much set. That was retirement planning. Not so much anymore. It hadn't been that way for quite a while. So we want to certainly make sure we're talking about those. Well, our final one this week here on our common pain points is the market. As always, the market is going to be what it is. And I wanted to kind of bring this up this way. If you have anxiety about it and you spend all your time watching the market, watching it go up and down, you're probably not in the right kind of plan for you, because that's just no way to be. You can't spend all your time, kind of obsessing over it and worrying about the next big downturn. It's understandable, but the market runs in cycles. And granted, it's been weird, since 2008, obviously we had the huge downturn, but we've been on a 10 and a half year or so run now at this point. And things have been pretty darn good overall, but you have to be smart and be properly weighted and allocated for the time of life that you're in, because the inevitability is it's going to take a downturn sometime.
It's always going to go up and it's always going to go down. And we tell people that, just like you said, if you're constantly worried about that, then we need to reassess what types of investments you're in, because that's no way to be. And you certainly don't want to, obsess about it. And, some people always want the next latest tip, even if they're in retirement. It's a market going up or down. I said, you know what? All I know is it's going to do one of those, because we don't plan that way. We basically are going to design, whether they're in retirement or saving for retirement, a plan that, is going to allow them to achieve their goals. And we tell them, and it's a lot of what we do in our meetings. We don't talk about the numbers so much as to, here's what the economy's doing or the market's doing. And it doesn't really have any short-term effect on what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and do you find, Tony, that a lot of people, well, I guess if you think about it this way too, and I don't want to necessarily talk bad of other people, but when you're thinking about it, we've had a 10-year run, and there's a lot of advisors and stuff out there right now who only have ever known the upside. They may have been maybe in practice, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right, and they only know the upside. And so there is an advantage to have doing this, the experience that you've had for the last 23 years. You've seen it go up and down, because everybody's a genius when it's going up, right?
That's right.
Everybody
looks good.
Everybody looks good. So it's planning through the potential downtimes and the downtimes that's important, because we do still have to be in the market. Even as we hit retirement, right? We got to keep up with inflation. We can't just take everything and throw it in a checking account or a savings account, because especially the last years, you're not making enough to even, keep up your purchasing power.
That's correct. And like you said, when things are going good, everybody wants to be in the market. And everybody, gets used to those returns. And what we try to tell them and coach them on is, it's important to us, and you need to make it a priority, is the return of your principal and on your principal. And, some people, when things are going good, they really don't care. But as soon as there's some sort of downturn, and it's going to come at some point, because the markets do go up and down, that, we got to be prepared for that and, have at least your portfolio structured properly.
Yeah. And a lot of times it comes down to risk tolerance and allocation for each person individually and the time of life you're in. And I think it was pretty close to that. What was that Will Rogers quote? I'm not so much worried about the return on my money, but the return of my money. I think it was. Yes. Yeah. There you go. That's right. Well, this has been another great podcast here with Tony Mauro. This is Playing with the Taxman podcast. Feel free to subscribe on iTunes, iHeart, Stitcher, Google Play, various different media outlets. Share with friends and family on Facebook and social media. And if you got questions or concerns, give them a call at 844-707-7381. That's 844-707-7381. You can also check them out online at origtaxdoctor.com. Let me spell that out. ORIG taxdoctor.com. ORIG taxdoctor.com. Tony, my friend, thank you so much for being here and having me on your podcast, and we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you.
Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Playing with the Taxman.
Anthony Mauro, HD Vest Advisor. Securities offered through HD Vest Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through HD Vest Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through HD Vest Insurance Agency, LLC. 6333 North State Highway 161, 4th floor, Irving, Texas, 75038. 972-870-6000. The Original Tax Doctor, Inc. is not a registered broker-dealer or